You're walking through Rome's filthiest pleasure district, the Sabura, where the streets stink of cheap wine, sweat, and sin. You pass brothels with creaking doors and laughing men, when suddenly your eyes land on a woman whose face you know. Your stomach drops. Beneath the smudged makeup and the cheap perfume is not some nameless prostitute. It's Valeria Messalina, the Empress of Rome herself, wife of Emperor Claudius, working a brothel room like a common street girl. And the worst part? She's not there because she has to be. She's there because she wants to be. She isn't a desperate woman forced into this life. She's the most powerful woman in the empire, sneaking out of the palace at night to challenge Rome's prostitutes in contests of sheer sexual endurance. And trust me, if you think Roman decadence begins and ends with Caligula, what you're about to hear will make Caligula look like a shy altar boy. Because Messalina didn't just misuse her power. She turned her sexuality into a weapon that would shake the empire to its foundations and seal her own horrific end. The year was 38 CE, and Rome was buzzing with celebration. The city's marble temples were draped with laurel, streets were swept clean, and flowers floated on the Tiber. A wedding had united Emperor Claudius with the dazzling young Valeria Messalina. She was barely 15, a girl by modern standards, but in Roman eyes, she was the perfect empress. Her family name reached back to the earliest days of the Republic. Her skin was as pale as polished marble, her hair a golden cascade under the sunlight, her features sculpted like the statues of Venus in the Forum. Claudius, 13 years older, walked with an uneven gait, his body marked by stiffness and tremors, likely from cerebral palsy. But what he lacked in grace, he made up for with a sharp administrative mind. And now, he had something more. A wife who embodied everything Rome valued: nobility, fertility, and divine bloodlines. In public, Messalina was perfection. She bore him 2 children, attended state events with serene grace, and moved through religious ceremonies with quiet dignity. To the people, she was the picture of imperial virtue. But appearances in Rome were often masks, and Messalina's mask hid a hunger that would soon become unstoppable. It began as faint ripples in palace gossip. Servants whispered about the Empress dismissing her guards late at night. They noticed her slipping into plain tunics and coarse cloaks, garments that clashed violently with her silks and jewels. At first, it seemed like harmless rebellion from a bored young woman trapped in imperial routine. But those who followed her discovered she wasn't wandering Rome's elegant streets. She was descending into its rotting underbelly, the Sabura. The Sabura was a tangle of narrow alleys and cheap taverns. The air stank of spilled wine, cooking oil, and human waste. Oil lamps flickered over red-painted doors of brothels where women lounged in thresholds, calling to passing men. Messalina didn't just walk through. She studied. She watched how prostitutes tilted their heads, how they touched a man's arm just enough to hook him, how they bargained over price and time. She memorized faces, routines, and the hierarchy of Rome's sex trade, from street girls to high-class courtesans. This wasn't idle curiosity. It was preparation. Her descent into the Sabura's world took its first step during Saturnalia in 40 CE. Saturnalia was chaos incarnate. Masters served slaves, rules dissolved, and drunken chants echoed through the city until dawn. While Claudius led the official rites, Messalina slipped away. Dressed as a commoner, her golden hair hidden under a dark wig, she approached a brothel whose door hung half open, spilling warm light and the smell of incense onto the street. The brothel keeper, a sharp-eyed man with gold rings and the face of someone who had seen every kind of depravity, sized her up. She offered herself for the night, no pay required. Thinking she was a rich woman seeking a thrill, he agreed. What happened next left the women whispering for months. Messalina didn't just work. She dominated. One man after another, without pause, without fatigue. When others stopped to rest, she demanded more. When dawn came and no men remained, she finally left, her disguise damp with sweat, her face glowing not from shame but from triumph. In the following months, her secret outings became operations. Loyal servants smuggled her out under layers of disguise: wigs, soot-smeared cheeks, coarse wool dresses. She invented names, false stories, and moved from one brothel to another. Then she raised the stakes. Competitions. Messalina challenged Rome's most famous courtesans to see who could take the most men in a single night. The prizes weren't just gold, they were reputation, status, and fear. The most infamous took place in 41 CE. Her rival was Scylla, a courtesan so skilled she was courted by senators. The event was held in a private house lit by hundreds of lamps, packed with Rome's elite. Scylla paced herself, reaching 25 clients before declaring herself done. The crowd cheered until they saw Messalina still working. She passed 30 and only stopped when there was no one left. The laughter died. Men looked at one another in disbelief. They had not just watched a contest. They had watched the Empress of Rome break every boundary of decency and do it without shame. By 42 CE, Messalina's ambitions shifted. It was no longer about pleasure, it was about control. She established a luxury brothel in a villa near the Campus Martius. The decor was opulent: marble floors, silk curtains, gold-plated lamps. But the women who worked there weren't street girls. They were noble-born wives and daughters, blackmailed into service under threats to their families. The clients were Rome's most powerful men: senators, generals, merchants. Every whispered word, every act of humiliation was recorded by Messalina's spies. She could destroy any man who entered, and she knew it. By 44 CE, secrecy bored her. She began staging public orgies disguised as religious festivals. Invitations were sent to Rome's elite under the pretense of piety. The ceremonies began solemnly: hymns, sacrifices, but soon dissolved into chaos. It was genius blackmail. The shame was her leash, and she pulled it at will. Then, in 48 CE, she committed the act even Rome couldn't forgive. With Claudius away in Ostia, Messalina held a public wedding to her lover, the young senator Gaius Silius. It was witnessed, legal, and binding. She wore the bridal veil, offered sacrifices, and signed contracts, declaring herself empress of a new regime. When Claudius heard, he laughed at first until the evidence poured in. He rode back to Rome with troops, finding Messalina still celebrating in the palace gardens. Witnesses say her face drained of color as she realized the game was over. Her execution was swift. Her name was erased from monuments, her statues destroyed, her memory condemned by law. The woman who ruled Rome through lust had been erased from its story. Would you like me to format this next for YouTube narration, with pacing, tone breaks, and emphasis markers for voiceover?